Hey, what's up, guys? Roby1 here. Big news yesterday in the world of nerddom as Star Wars Episode 7 has finally gotten a release date. So this is pretty gargantuan news, as you could imagine. And as a Star Wars superfan, I felt only obligated to talk about it to you guys. You'll probably notice that there's no video footage or gameplay or anything going. I just sort of figured I would put up a photo or two relating to Star Wars and just sort of riff about this for a few minutes. As previously stated, I am such a Star Wars massive fan. It is probably the most important thing in my life is Star Wars news, and of course, all of the scuttlebutt surrounding the new trilogy and everything that's been happening the last few years. So first things first, the release date, you probably know, it's December 18th, 2015. It has been initially, since its announcement, been scheduled for 2015. And there was rumors rumbling around earlier this year that said the studio might have been looking at actually making it a holiday release for the first time. So the other reason that this is big news is because all 6 previous films have released in the third weekend of May. A New Hope was May 25th, 1977, and that weekend, those few days, they've kind of bounced around between all 6 previous films. So the news that this was maybe going to release in the holiday was kind of a big deal. And sure enough, it turned out to be true. Here's the thing is that it also turned out to still be 2015. What I've been struggling with, I should have mentioned that. I've been struggling with a lot of things since all this stuff has been happening a few years, for the last few years. As a Star Wars superfan, that means many things to me. One of them is I am very proudly a fan of all 6 films. I think they are all masterpieces and fantastic examples of the lore of Star Wars and everything that George Lucas created. I'm also a huge fan of George Lucas because, in my opinion, who wouldn't be? He's an amazing man and one of the best storytellers ever. He changed filmmaking for the better for all time, and he's only given us some of the greatest stories and greatest movies ever made, and some of the greatest characters ever made. So I believe that he only deserves our admiration and respect. And that's all he ever gets from me. Same with all 6 films. There's a lot of people who rest in the realm of not enjoying, of course, the prequels or Return of the Jedi. And let me tell you something about people who only like 2 out of the 6 Star Wars films. Those are people who... they have the right to their opinion, for one thing. So let's not mistake what I'm saying. You guys, if you feel that way, that's fine. You have the right to like or dislike any movies you want. However, don't claim to be Star Wars fans, and you sure as shit have no reason to make any sort of claims as to the future or direction of the franchise, or the filmmakers, or anything. You're just someone who is probably a film fan. I kind of barely recognize you as a film fan if you look at Star Wars that way, but that's fine. You're not a Star Wars fan, so there's no reason for you to be able to determine the future if you only like 2 out of the 6 films. You're someone who really just likes some of those space movies from the 70s and 80s. That's fine. Just admit it. Don't pretend to be a Star Wars fan and make claims about what George Lucas should or shouldn't do and which movies are good or bad. You have lost that privilege if you decide to look at Star Wars that way, which again, you have the right to do it. Just don't make the wrong claims. Anyway, that was a little soapbox moment for me, so sorry about going off on that tangent. The point is, what's been interesting since all of this news, since George Lucas deservedly retired and then unfortunately sold his company to Disney, is Disney's been making pretty much a bunch of poor decisions. The news has been so back and forth with the film and the writing, the writing staff, who's being cast, are they even casting, what's JJ doing? It's been almost insulting. I remember I've been likening this to some of my friends the last few days since some more nuggets of information came out before the release date. Is one of the things that was great about the time of the prequels, which they were first announced in 1997. Phantom Menace came out in 99. They were first announced in 97. And at that time, same goes to the original trilogy too, but at the time in 97, it was handled so perfectly. It was... here's what I'm making. Here's the 3 movies that are going to be happening. It's the story of Darth Vader. Here are the actors. Here are the characters that you're going to see. Here are the characters that these actors are playing. Here's Samuel L. Jackson. He's going to be in the movie. Liam Neeson, he's going to be in the movie. Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, they're going to be in the movie. So it gave us a better idea of what was going on. A conversation I had with another friend, sort of revealed some more ideas along this topic. Why it was easier for them to do that back then than it is today. The problem today is that we just get news about if JJ farts on set, what does that mean for the story? And it only seems like they have no idea what they're doing with this film. I'm jumping all over the place. The point is, when you step back to 97 and at the time that they made those announcements, there is something there's a case to be made for, at that time, because of the lack of internet and information flow, we weren't really privy to the types of information that we're getting now, such as every single little decision on who's writing this, who's doing that, who's stepping in, who's stepping out. Maybe they're going to here's a casting call sheet, doesn't mean this, doesn't mean that. That stuff probably still did happen back then. We just didn't find out about it until they were ready to make the announcement of, these are the movies, this is the story, these are the characters. Today, we're not getting that. We're getting every little nugget of information leading up to when they finally can tell us who's in the movie and what's the story. So anyway, again, I'm getting off on many tangents. Star Wars is passionate to me, so I need to kind of rein it in a little bit. The point is, the news has been handled very poorly, I think, since this whole announcement of the new trilogy. And I feel like a lot of poor decisions are being made. It seems like everyone is trying to get their hands in the Star Wars pot now that Lucas is no longer involved, which I think is unfortunate. Now, when it comes to the release date, again, it's 2015, like they've always said. They went from a May release, a summer release, to a holiday release for December. What was really sort of bothering me for so long was that it became obvious that they didn't know what they were doing. Michael Arndt was writing it, starting a story and a treatment that was started by George Lucas, a year before he decided to sell the company. At the time, George Lucas had already spoken to Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher about coming back, and everyone was slowly coming on board. So it gave us an idea of, Lucas, the man whose story we're going to be learning, has been making the right decisions and determining what characters and actors and story we're going to be having going forward. Now we know that we've switched writing credits from Michael Arndt to J.J. Abrams and Larry Kasdan. Larry Kasdan, of course, worked on Empire Strikes Back, so that's fantastic. He's a smart man. Worked on what is my favorite of all 6 Star Wars films, so I definitely trust him, and I trust J.J. But the problem is, so much back and forth was happening on who's doing this, who's doing what. Is Harrison Ford even going to be in the movie? And if he is or isn't, doesn't that kind of determine what story you're going to tell? How can you keep telling us that this film is going to come out in 2015? Again, this is before yesterday's news. How can you keep telling us this film is going to come out in 2015 when you can't possibly have any idea what story you're writing, what characters are going to be involved, and where this final trilogy needs to go? We don't know who's going to be in it. We don't know what characters or actors are going to be involved. You don't know if Harrison Ford is going to be in, which means that's either yes or no to Han Solo, only an integral part to the story. Same with Luke Skywalker and anyone else involved. So why were they maintaining the short film schedule to make what is the most important film in the last 15 years, in my opinion, the first episode to a brand new final Star Wars trilogy? I kind of just wish that they would have said, we don't have a release date, we're still working on it, we're still casting, we're still writing, it'll be ready when it's ready. And I really wish that was the road that they were taking and the approach they were taking to news. However, they weren't doing it. I'm just going to go ahead and blame Disney because that's what I want to do. And I think that Disney's been making poor decisions. So whatever, I don't want to rant about Disney because aside from Star Wars, I actually do love Disney, don't get me wrong. So they've now decided to make it December 2015. I'm glad that they have given it a little extra time to breathe and sit in the crock pot, if you will. Another 6 months or so of production, shooting, and post-production visual effects. I think that's great news because, like I said, we're on such a short schedule between now and when this film was supposed to release in May of 2015. Now we've got an extra 6 or so months. I think that's great. It's very weird to consider it being a holiday release because, as I said, Star Wars films are notoriously the tentpole films of the summer. They kick off the summer. They're always in May. Every single one has been in May. And now we're going all the way to December. That's a little bit crazy. However, there's a lot of factors that lead to that. I think one is the production schedule, and I like the idea of them doing it for the sake of making it a better film. I hear that Kathleen Kennedy, someone who I love and trust, and I'm very glad that George Lucas gave control of Lucasfilm to her. She apparently was the one I heard just through a rumor of a friend of mine that she's the one who pushed for, hey, I can give us 6 more months. Let's get this out later in the year. The other thing to consider is 2015 is going to be a banner year, as my friend calls it, a bloodbath. Avengers 2, of course, is coming out. Man of Steel 2, which is apparently going to be Superman versus Batman, unfortunately, but Man of Steel 2 is going to be coming out. Several other films we were talking about last night, now I just can't even remember. But it's going to be a crazy year. So right away, the movies that you notice are the Avengers 2 and Star Wars Episode 7. Those are going to be 2 of the biggest movies of all time. And they're both coming out in the same year. Holy shit, that's insane. Awesome, but insane. And the real piece of that puzzle is both Marvel and now Lucasfilm and Star Wars, as we all know, is owned by Disney. So Disney is going to be releasing the two biggest movies of that year, as well as, like I said, two of the biggest movies of all time. They certainly don't want to be competing against themselves. So I think that since Avengers 2 has been in production longer, that's going to take the May slot, and they decided to take Star Wars and push it back to the end of the year. So in that respect, especially from a business decision, and the decision of my wallet, the fate of my wallet, I should say, I totally understand where they're coming from, and I get that. So at the end of the day, as a Star Wars superfan, I certainly don't mind that it's coming out in December. I'm glad to just get the release date. I feel like it means that they have a better grasp, hopefully, of what they're doing, what story they're shooting, and who's going to be in the movie, that they can finally move forward with it. It is kind of bittersweet and a little bit sad to know that the movie is not coming out in May like all the previous ones have. It's going to be something else that lends to how different this is all feeling since Lucas has retired and Disney has been taken over and all these different decisions have been made and all these different people are involved with the making of the film. So even though it's another thing to add on top of how different this new trilogy is probably going to feel, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Some people thought that I would, love or hate this, probably hate this. And honestly, I kind of just don't care. My attitude is make sure it's coming out at a time where you've made the best Star Wars film possible. This is the first time that the films are getting out of the creative control of its creator. That's been very hard for me to swallow, but I knew that was going to happen at some point. We knew Star Wars couldn't die with George Lucas, thank God. So it's good to know that it's still moving forward. He's involved as a creative consultant. It's still his story. That's all I really care about. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter when it's coming out as long as they have the time to make the movie it needs to be. There's a lot of pressure. I'm sure that's part of the reason it's been so hard for them to make the right decisions and get this movie made the way they've been trying to. I think it's very intimidating. I think that they don't know what movie they were trying to make for a long time, and they're scared to mess it up. George Lucas can do whatever he wants. It's his baby, and it's his story to tell, and it's our love of the story to just accept and receive it. When it comes to other people taking it over, it's a big deal. I don't necessarily envy J.J. Abrams and the rest of the new people who are involved. J.J. Abrams has brought a lot of his bad robot staff over to this. People who I love. I kind of wish more Star Wars alumni from like the prequel trilogy were making it over, since those people were just making those movies only 10 years ago. But I trust J.J. ultimately. Bear in mind, I'll leave you all with this one thought. Bear in mind, despite all of the positive and the many negative things and everything about Disney and the horrible shooting schedule and news and everything that I've touched on that has made me worried, at the end of the day, I still have faith. I have faith in the story. I have faith in George Lucas. When it comes to JJ taking over, as I just was saying, I have faith in him. Ultimately, despite all this crazy batshit news and every stupid decision Disney is making with their hand in the pot, I have faith in the films. The three films, the final Star Wars trilogy, is probably going to be as amazing as we've always envisioned it could be. So I think that there's still hope for the film. Anyway, whatever. I rambled. I tried to make this as quick as I could. There's many other thoughts I have on Star Wars and the new trilogy and everything going on, but I don't want to dump it all in this video. I already talked about more than just the release date as it is. So December 18th, 2015. Ultimately, I'm excited. Are you excited? What do you think? What do you think about Star Wars, the new trilogy, J.J. Abrams, Disney, all this good stuff? Let us know. Of course, subscribe to the video, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.